When people ask me how I can say my dad's suicide was the best thing that ever happened to me, um, it's not because it didn't hurt, it's because of who I became through it. And I want to share this today because trauma can destroy you or it can wake you up. And I want to talk about how mine did a bit of both. And also because people have been asking me about this story, so I thought I'd try and share a bit of it. It's a snapshot of kind of the stuff. So I thought what I'd do is give you a bit of context on the background. So growing up as a child, my dad was an alcoholic. He was a very abusive alcoholic. And him and my mum would get together and break up and get together and break up on a regular basis. And there was lots of domestic abuse going on. So he was quite violent towards my mum. Um, Less so, he wasn't towards me and my brother, but obviously we were witnessing the violence. There was lots of emotional instability. Um, I struggled with kind of like my own emotions because obviously I was brought up in a very emotionally dysregulated house. So that's been part of the journey as well. And when I got to about 15, my dad decided to start turning his verbal aggression towards me. Um, I can't remember why. Um, Maybe because I was appearing like a grown up and I was standing up to him a lot more than I used to. Um, but I said to my mum at the time, I said either he goes or I go. And in the end, because my brother wanted him to go as well, we made the decision that he would leave. And I didn't see him for 5 years. A lot of people thought that was a mistake. Often people who have never experienced violent, abusive parents um, and didn't really understand what it meant to live through that. And when I say my dad was an alcoholic, my dad was, to put it into picture, if you think of George Best as the worst type of alcoholic who couldn't live without alcohol, my dad was in that category. So it wasn't like somebody who used it as a crutch. He could not function without alcohol. So it was that kind of level. So when I turned about 20, I started seeing him again, bit by bit. And then on my 23rd birthday, it was the last time I saw him. And he came to my work, and I had just started a permanent contract there. And it was in banking, it was all new to me. And the reception phoned me up and said, we've got a man in reception who says he's your father, and he's asked if he can use the toilet. And I said, as I was saying yes to them, I felt my stomach sink because I thought, I don't even have to go downstairs, but I know from the tone of the receptionist's voice and what they've asked me that I'm going to go down there and my dad is going to be drunk. It wasn't such a big deal. I mean, he was joyful drunk on that day, so it wasn't such a big deal. But it was hard, and I didn't really have any major inclinations to see him after that. And I was living in England. My dad was living in France a lot of the time, and there was no real desire to make the effort. So when I was 25, um, I went on holiday with my brother. We were away for 2 weeks. We went to South America. Lovely holiday. It was like the holiday of our dreams that we've been planning for ages. And when we were away, we were talking about how we hadn't seen our dad for ages and maybe we should make an effort to see him when we got back. Well, when we got home, my mum kind of broke the news that while we'd been away, he'd committed suicide. And she didn't tell us because obviously we were away. Now, we got back at the end of June. Now, we didn't know that it happened really near the beginning of our holiday when we were away. It was a big shock. But this is what, like, just to kind of rub salt in the wounds, my dad did it. He sent us a late email so that when his body was found, he was found on Father's Day, just to ensure that in case we had any doubt about why he had done it, he was sending a message. And trust me, if you knew my father, that he knew exactly what he was doing. And when I say that, I can almost hear the intake of breath. Whenever I say to people he did it so his body was found on Father's Day, people tend to go, because it's just like, yeah, that's what he did. And when you're going through grief in those initial stages, grief is really hard, can be really hard after suicide, because when you go through the anger stage, who do you feel anger towards? The person who's dead? That feels kind of strange. But then do you feel anger towards yourself because you didn't do enough? You just feel angry at the world. And it's a really horrible place to be. And it is whenever you're going through any form of grief. So this was kind of like the moment that the bottom dropped out of my world. And I'm not going to say that it changed here, but this is the beginning of the change. Um, but it took years, right? I'm not going to lie and say, well, you come back from this and you're like, oh, yes, I'm sorted, right? I've done a bit of work and I'm okay. Um, it's not really, but it was a turning point. So when you're going through this kind of level of grief, when a trauma that is so intense, and you think this is like, I don't know how I'm going to come back from this because I'm really depressed. The doctors put me on antidepressants. I actually, I don't tell many people this, but I got hospitalised for a suicide attempt at the time as well when I was going through this. So now I've told loads of people. And I was going through all of that myself. And you then have to get to the point when you're going through this whole process and say, right, do I give up or do I find a way through it? And I had to choose the second option eventually, even though it did take me a long time. So some of the things it did is it opened my eyes up to, but it didn't open my eyes. I was in banking. I hated banking. Right? I'll be honest with you, I hated it right from the beginning, but it was a good job with good money. And I was straight out of university and everybody told me that you need to get a good job when you leave school. So I did, and I hated it. And when I say I hated it, I mean I really hated it. I hated the hours, the stress, the pressure. I hated the obsession with money all the time. I don't know. I didn't like it at all. It was a very, very male dominated environment. When I started, I was I think it was, I don't know, 600 people on the trading floor, 300. I can't remember if it was 300 or 600, hundreds anyway. And I was one of only like two women that weren't PAs. And I think it was just the whole environment. It just didn't suit me. But I was pushing myself through it because it's what I was supposed to do. And I think that the catalyst of suicide showed me that actually I don't need to do that. I can find another way and I can find my own way. It deepened my spiritual practice. And it allowed me to live more consciously. So I became more aware of what I needed in my life. And the biggest realization, I think the biggest thing that kind of helped me through it all was I didn't lose a father when my dad committed suicide. I lost the potential of one, okay? Because my dad wasn't in my life, right? So I didn't lose a dad. I lost the potential that maybe one day he might stop drinking and become a good dad, which was just ridiculous because he never would have. And so it was kind of understanding that and going through that whole process and coming out the other side as a different me. So it made me stronger. I mean, I'm much more able to cope with things now because I've been through this. I know I can cope with anything, life will throw you stuff. One unexpected thing is I've always had a deep spiritual connection in lots of ways. I trained as a medium when I was, 19 or something, I don't know, really young. And when he died, for 10 years, I don't get it anymore, but for 10 years after he died, I used to smell this. It was a weird burning smell. I don't even know why it was burning, but I would smell that when he was around and I would feel his energy. But I also felt like the choices I was making in my life were influenced by him. So what my dad brought to my life was, because he did bring, it's easy to look at someone, and this is where we get into black and white thinking. It's easy to look at someone and say, right, he was an abusive alcoholic who committed suicide. He was all bad. But that's not the truth. And when you can look at it and you can see both sides, then you kind of realise that you've actually dealt with a lot of the stuff that's going on. But my dad, when he was a teenager, studied with the Dalai Lama for 3 months, which is incredible in itself. But I didn't realise that kind of the influence that Buddhism had on my life all the way through, which was brought about by him. And also that he, at the time when he did that, he turned vegetarian. And I was brought up vegetarian as a child. I've never eaten meat. And that's how we were brought up as kids. And there are lots of other things that he brought in as well. And I feel that after he died, and people think this is a really weird thing to say, but I felt like he was steering my life and he was guiding me to the life that I needed to live, and that his influence was stronger than it ever had been when I was alive. And just like kind of there's a real realization, and it's to remember that everything that breaks us can also build us if we let it. So yes, it can be really bad when we go through trauma and it can break us right down, and it did break me right down, but it allowed me to rebuild as someone completely new, someone completely different. Do I think I'm completely over everything that I've experienced? I'm not sure I will ever be completely over it. I think there's always a a shadow of what I've experienced living over my life. Weirdly enough, I tend to make friends with or attract people who are former addicts. I think I pull an energy in. And if you work in the spiritual world, you'll know that often when you work with someone, you connect with someone who's either experienced something very similar to you or has a linking experience. And I feel like I very much, on a spiritual energy, pull people in who have experienced similar things to me. But I've learned to kind of do that. And one of the things you might ask is, and this is a really important thing that I would answer, and I thought about this quite clearly when I was making this video, is if I could go back and rewrite my life and take that element, so I didn't have to experience my dad's suicide, out of my life, would I do it? And I thought, no, I wouldn't, because everything, and gosh, how old am I now? It's over 18 years since it happened. And every thing that's happened in those 18 years has happened because of what I experienced. So not directly, but there's a train that runs through. And so who I would be today if I hadn't experienced that is totally different to who I am now. So if I go back and rewrite that, I'm saying I don't like who I am right now and I want to change everything about who I am. So I couldn't go back and rewrite that. And I'm at peace with it. I'm at peace with where I am and what I've experienced. So hopefully you've got something out of this. But for you, I want to give you a bit of meaning behind it, because I just want you to know that everybody has experienced some kind of loss, some kind of trauma, some kind of grief that they've had to live through. And it's very easy to play one-upmanship, or my grief's worse than your grief. And it's not. Grief is grief, trauma is trauma. How you experience it, when you experience it, the way you experience it is unique to every single human being. And that's okay. And because I said to you, my dad brought the Buddhist stuff into my life, I will show you a Buddhist proverb that I know I've shared. For those of you that watch my videos on a regular basis, I know I've shared before, and I will share it. I will certainly share it again because it's one that means a lot to me. But it's the story of a woman whose child dies, and she asks, she doesn't know what to do. And someone says, go to the Buddha and ask the Buddha if he will bring your child back. And so she does. She goes to the Buddha and she's like, I can't live without my child. Can you bring him back? And the Buddha says to her, I will, on one condition, that you bring me a mustard seed from the house that has experienced no loss. And so she goes and she searches and she searches and she searches and she searches some more. And eventually she goes back to the Buddha and she says, I get it. No, there is no house. There's experienced no loss. And it's important to remember this when you are going through that grief, because we are never truly alone in our pain. We've all experienced it. Everybody has that shred that runs through their lives and that you can connect with anybody over it. And when we're in that trauma, it does make us believe we're the only ones. We're the only ones who feel that way, the only ones who are suffering. But our suffering is what connects us to other people. It's what makes us human. And sorry, I don't know why that bit got me most emotional. As you can see, it is still emotional talking about trauma and grief. And it's actually healthy to feel that emotion. What I do know is I can finish this video and it's not going to sit with me. And that's because I know I processed it, but I'm talking about it, so it's there. Right, so if you are in the middle of your own trauma, just know that you're not broken and you're just in the process of becoming who you truly can be. And you can use it to create a life that you want to lead. And if you'd like someone to walk beside you and you're ready for the next stage, okay? I'm not a grief counsellor and I'm not somebody who works with people in deep stages of grief. But if you've been through grief, you've been through trauma, and you're feeling like you're coming out the other side, and you want that extra support there of community, of connection, of heart-centered connection, and just those deep practices, then I'd love to welcome you into my free group, The Sacred Pause. We explore healing, mindfulness, nervous system regulation, and just finding steadiness through the mess of real life. So I'll put the link in the description, and I would absolutely love to see you there.